were stopped. Over to you, Nariman.
Yeah, sorry, Rigobert, we stopped at you. Apologies again for this. And for all the questions that came, don't worry, we have saved them. So don't worry, I have been copy pasting them on a different sheet and we will get to them right now. Rigo, we were with you and we were discussing the opportunities that exist for leveraging data ecosystems.
Yeah, exactly. And I was talking about the PASEC, which is data that's collected by the Conference of Ministers of Francophone countries, and also the MICS by UNICEF, collected by UNICEF. I mean, we need to find a way to connect all these data sources and all these actors, and to build a one single repository that will be open to everyone. We need to also find a way to, in building that, we are going to find a way to establish policies for data sharing, policies for data collection, for data archiving. I think we need to what we have to do is that the bits are there, the dots are there, we need to connect them and really build this solid and robust framework.
Thank you very much. I think in Malawi, there is something that is happening outside the education sector, in the agriculture sector. They have established a data portal that is linking up government, donor, and civil society and academia. They are sharing their data on a portal. They have, I think the way they have started, we want to learn from them so that maybe we can start in a similar way in the education sector, because you can see they are trying to build trust. So instead of asking every member of that community to share their data on the portal, they are actually leaving it to each member to decide whether they will share the actual data on the portal, or they will share information about the data and links to the portal on their website. So different members have shared data in a different way, either uploading their data on the portal, or just sharing the links to their data, and also description of the data that they hold, so that users who come to use the portal can know what data is the members hold, and how they can access it, whether they can access it right there, or they can ask, they can request for the data through a link. So we think that we will approach it, because it's being spearheaded by one of the universities and government. So the government body that is actually working on that portal includes central government agencies like the National Statistical Office and the National Planning Commission are the one who have spearheaded that creation of a data portal for researchers and other users of the data to access data which they can use. So we want to learn from them and see whether we can do something similar in Malawi. And the good news is, I think the ministry is now aware that data needs to be shared, and there's a lot of the ministry has been for the past few years wanting to collaborate with researchers on analysis of the data that they hold. So doing joint analysis with the ministry is also one way we are anticipating this collaboration amongst different stakeholders, that if we link up academia with the skills capacity, they can actually do some of the analysis of these large data sets that government hold and they are not analyzed. In doing so, if it's done jointly, it will work in a way that they'll build capacity of ministry officials how to use that data and give them tools on how that data can be analyzed. So we are thinking that we will approach the ministry, to start with this collaboration. Of course, within our project, we are thinking of starting this at the district level, trying to do something similar, building capacity at the district level to showcase to the ministry what can be done from this collaboration. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Esme, and thanks, Charles and Rigo. And I can't wait to be with you along this journey and, also hopefully continue engaging with all of our audience as we see how this research develops as part of Unlocking Data Initiative, as we try these different prototypes to build on these opportunities. Again, we apologize to all the audience that there was a technical issue. Thank you again for joining back. It's we're still together. We still have 30 more minutes to go. And I would, for all the people who already submitted questions, don't worry, we have saved those and we will right now start opening the door for questions from you. I would encourage you that if you have a question that you have not submitted, please click on the Q&A function and submit your question. All right, so here we go, team. This is where we open it up to the audience. And I think there is quite a number of questions, actually. It's fascinating the number of questions that are coming on this issue that build on this issue of trust. And I think we have a very politically savvy audience who are really on the money. You know, they really know what the core issues are. And there are 3 questions that I'm going to read that are really around this idea of giving the benefit of the doubt to the government, but also to that there are real legitimate concerns and fears around why data is not being used. And so question number 1 is coming from an anonymous person. Most government departments have a challenge of anonymizing the data. Thus, sometimes there is a reluctance in sharing. So what can be done to address this challenge? On a similar note, Cloud Fotso is saying, are there any instances, for example, where this data has been misused? And this is what is causing the governments to limit access to the data to the public. And very much within the similar bucket is Claire Cosa, who's saying, how can we handle dishonesty in the use of data? We can make the data available, but then it's dishonestly used. And so this inhibits access or disclosure. Some data users cannot be trusted as they could have bad motives with the data. So this idea of like, you know, all of this mistrust that is there and that there are legitimate fears and concerns of anonymization, misusing data, and so on. I'd love to really hear from you all about it. So whoever is ready, go ahead.
Let me share, in response to that, let me share the experiences for Malawi. Before Unlocking Data Project, we were implementing a similar project on trying to open up data in the education system. And, you know, we were using examination raw scores, you know, to do the analysis, to showcase how we can link different data sets and do a meta-analysis around that data. And we had problems for almost 1.5 years with the examinations board to allow us use that data. So through negotiations, of course, there was change of leadership at the exam board, and it was a colleague from our faculty who was now heading the exam board. Through discussions with the examinations board, we came with a way how they could trust us with the examination data. And what we did, we assured them that the data will be anonymized, but it will not be us anonymizing. They didn't have the skills to do the anonymized data. So we worked together with them, with their people from the computer section who are holding the data, and they were given the tools to anonymize the data. Once the data was anonymized, removed all the names and all the identifiers in the data sets. That data set was given to us. And throughout the analysis, we worked to them. So what I wanted to say is collaboration, actually. Most of the time working in a collaborative way with the people who hold data will remove some of the mistrust that they hold, rather than just going there saying, give us your data, we want to use it. So working together collaboratively is one way, you know, to go around mistrust that is there. Once the trust is built, I'm sure, then they will take the next step of anonymizing their data and sharing it. Thank you.
I don't know whether my brother wanted to go first, but I can say that, okay, about anonymizing, that's an issue of capacity. Sometimes we also agree, giving a benefit of doubt, that government doesn't have sometimes enough personnel or a person designated to data. They only probably have an IT person to manage the system, not necessarily dealing with the data. Our subnationals, we were discussing with them, you can imagine a county director of education does not have a statistician, does not have, so he uses his basic knowledge. So it's very difficult to do that. But I agree with my sister, one of the ways is to anonymize that data. Well, we are establishing an academy at Zizi Afrique with partners. And that's why I'm also reaching out to some of the listeners here to reach out to us, those who have apps and that, so that we can build this capacity around data. Partners can come in and do that. Then there's the issue of also now, how do we do that? I think, has data been misused? Yes, data can be misused to either misreport or to give what I was calling a skewed narrative, that you want to show this, and the government will ask you, why are you also not showing this other side? So I think it's balanced. It is to balance that. But the government has also been blamed on using our data without, a policy does not cite and say Gashoki 2020. I mean, it just writes a policy, data was used, but I don't know which data was used. So I think the other issue around that, as I finish this, is, can we make it an issue to base decisions on data? That way, we'll be driven to process the data we have. Other than we have a decision, but we don't have the data, we can't really pin it on which data was used. So maybe we were to use make decisions based on actual data, the data we have, then it's possible to drive that capacity towards anonymizing, managing, interoperating the systems, linking, and all that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think I'll say the same. I think the first thing that all the stakeholders is to do is to have some level of transparency and in the way data is being collected. And it's not just on the side of the CSOs or the universities, but it's also on the side of the government, really being transparent how this data is being collected, and jointly build protocols or policies for data collection, for data sharing, and for data archiving. I think when that will be done, we know now that we know exactly what quality data or good data that's collected for use within the country it's going to look like, and the protocols that is going to follow. So I think that will be developing this and promoting this and pushing this forward would really solve this issue, or reduce this issue of trust, or this issue where stakeholders do not work together.
But it's in a follow-up to that, Rigobert, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but more, how can we ensure that these policies happen? Like, what would be the incentive of government to do these kinds of policies then?
So the good thing is that the government itself wants to improve foundational learning, and I mean all the actors want to improve foundational learning, and the government has a lot of partnership agreements with some universities. They have partnership agreements with some NGOs, so there are already some bilateral relationships that are happening within the sector. Some of these NGOs provide capacity building services to the government for them to be able to analyze the data. Some of them provide technical and financial assistance. And I think it's about this movement, or all these key actors really coming together and being intentional about really building this system and building this network in a way that we do not have data lost anymore.
Appreciate it. One question from Maurice Mutsia, our partner at Zizi Afrique, is the role of subnationals in this case. How do we get them to use the data they already have to improve foundational learning? Sometimes they are the source of the data that's being held at the national level, and so working with them can make sense of this data could also help demonstrate the importance of evidence-based decision making. So maybe I would offer that to Charles as a start, and then if there are other follow-up comments, that's okay. because specifically I know ZZ Afrique is trying to engage subnationals. So maybe if you want to shed light on how your research will do that, Charles.
Yeah, it's interesting you've jumped on me fast. Now, yeah, we are working with subnationals. Maurice is asking what's their role. Currently, their role is just a conduit, if I put it bluntly, where the ministry asks for information, for data, they send it to schools, and then they transmit it back to the ministry. They are in between there. And we had a discussion last year in December with some 5 pilot counties on how do you even secure your job if your work is only to transmit data across. If I can do that directly with the teachers, then why are you there? So can you even use this data to make your own administrative decisions? So I think one of the way I look at it, Maurice, is that they have a role, one, in correcting that data, packaging it in such a way that they can send the product required for the ministry to use, but then they are left with some residue of data that they can use for their administrative duties. For example, when they go for schools meetings, they should have data to this. For example, let me use grade 3 exam that we have in Kenya, the CAPSEA exam. A county director of education should meet school heads and discuss foundational learning based on those results. What are we doing about it at the amongst my schools? And even going down, they should be discussing that on how which school had performed how, which children are performing how, and how can we improve that. So I see them as an opportunity where we can tap on where they are, because they interact with the parents, teachers, and the children themselves, other than the ministry, which is far up. So they can make this an agenda, and they have a role in foundational learning and numeracy in discussing, but they can only use data. So they have to get that data, analyze it, have the capacity to analyze it, then process it, and go back and discuss where there are opportunities, gaps, challenges, and that's how I see their role as being in this setup. Thank you.
Yeah, agreed. And I know our friend from Rwanda asked for the same. They're doing a similar project in Rwanda. So hopefully please get in touch with us. You know, the name is anonymous, so we don't really know you, but if you want to get in touch and we can share more about this process and think about how synergies can happen with Rwanda. They're working on a very similar level, they say, with also dashboards and things like that. I also know that because I'm part of this project too, and of this big initiative, is that you know, we're doing this using design-based implementation research. And so there is also something to the methodology that we're using in terms of working with people to prototype one step at a time and reflect and iterate rather than try a one-off solution. Rigo, I see you nodding. So if you want to comment on that, on the methodologies also, it's not only how to get people involved, but it's how we get people involved.
Yes. Because our aim is to actually find out that at the end of this project, what's the best pathway for increasing access and increases users and use of data. And the DBIR you were talking about is it's really what is going to get us there. I think the situational analysis we've done right now, it's really putting us on the right track, because right now we know what data is available. Right now we know what are the key barriers. Right now we know what are the key opportunities, and we have also mapped all the actors. We've also mapped the different initiatives within our countries that we can leverage on. So it's about now, yes, forming this movement, discussing with these stakeholders and putting this thing forward and seeing what works after 6 months, after 9 months, and yes, and doing some reiteration.
Great. There's another set of questions that goes into this idea of really thinking about culturally and linguistically relevant interventions. And there's a lot of mention of different underserved learners. There is questions about rural learners, learners with disabilities. Diane, yeah, there's basically questions around, did you find data around these populations, about learners with disabilities. So it might be a quick question to answer, but did you find these kinds of data being mapped or available, whether it's accessible or not? But did you find that these are repositories that are there, and who collects it? Nange, for example, asks, are these mostly collected by researchers in the global north? Or, I mean, Rigo, in your answer, you mentioned most are collected by men. So there's a question of like, how about underserved and rural students and students with disabilities? Is there data for them, and who collects this data for them? I would love to take all of you for that.
Yeah, so there is data. There is data on inclusiveness. I mean, on equity from disabled kids and all the rest. I mean, the data the government collects also highlights that. So the government can say, for instance, that in X district or in X region, we have this amount of impaired learners or so. It's also collected by CSOs, by some CSOs that are doing some work. But what I want to say is that data is extremely limited. I mean, data that would specifically address issues around, especially for Cameroon, issues around social and emotional learning, issues around inclusive education are extremely rare when we are looking at, if we want to focus on databases that are behind paywalls, or want to focus on indexed journals. But even when we go down into the gray literature, that data is also very limited. And I think it's a call for us to also encourage researchers, encourage data producers to also have a look into this very important educational issue.
Esme, maybe?
Yeah, thank you. In Malawi, I can say the ministry collects data on disabilities and also collects data for all schools, including the rural remote schools. They submit data, they are part of the school census that is conducted. But I think it's the use of that data. We don't see the statistics coming out on when it comes to this category of children who have various educational needs. The data doesn't come out like regularly. It only comes out when it's needed for a specific purpose by the ministry. Then they will analyze that part and present. But it's never, the general part is presented in the statistical bulletin that is released annually. But what I can say, in Malawi, we have got MECs operating at 2 levels. The regular MEC is school-based, so the data that is collected is not at individual pupil level, it's at school level. So it only says how many learners with various forms of disabilities are in the school. It just gives that aggregate figure. But there is, since 2012, the ministry has been collecting individualized MEC data. But up to now, that data has never been analyzed. So this is one of the points in unlocking data in Malawi, where we are trying to build synergies with the ministry. One of the reasons they haven't analyzed is lack of capacity, both technical, the infrastructure to bring all these data sets from the districts into one place. I think we need to think around that, and also think about the capacity to analyze true cohort data, because these are true cohorts. Each learner at entry into school is followed up until they exit school. So every year they update the record for that learner. What has happened to the next year? Is the learner repeating? Has the learner drop out? Has the learner moved to another school? And each learner has got a unique number that they carry out throughout their time in the education system. They're even thinking of transitioning that number, that once they transition to secondary level, there are plans to do that. I don't know whether they have done that. The learner will still use that unique ID that was generated when they entered grade 1, but also trying to use that same learner number during examinations, that the examinations boards should start using that number. So there is opportunity to have true pupil level data that actually encompass all the uniqueness of that learner in that data set. But what we need to do is get capacity and also build capacity both within Malawi, but even outside on how such data can be analyzed. Currently, I think that is what is preventing from using that rich data set. Thank you.
Yeah, I think in Kenya, where we have numbers, and I saw that question, we have numbers. We can get numbers of children with disability, but we do not have data on, are they running literacy and numeracy? I didn't, we didn't come across that data anywhere. We know about the others by grade. Researchers concentrate on the others, but we couldn't get anything on, are they running? What is their level of competency in numeracy? Are they numerate and literate? That's one thing. And this includes, I also see that question, children in refugee camps, and also children far left behind. And this includes the grade I talked about, that class called baby class, kindergarten, whatever we call it, age 3. Whatever happens there is still gray. And therefore, that much of the data, you realize that much of this data we are talking about that might be available is also gray literature, which was very difficult to access across, because we developed a common protocol for the 3 countries. Thank you for our technical team. You realize that that data is there, but done as PhD thesis and master's thesis. To assess the quality of those theses, to make some substantive, synthesis is quite a challenge. So I think to answer that is to say we do not know whether they are learning. We do not. I'm not aware of any. I might be limited in that, but I'm not aware of anybody assessing. Maybe we should have. Maybe it's an opportunity, and it's just crossed my mind. Can we come of the state of learning of children with disabilities? The state of literacy and numeracy report, an annual report probably showing where are they. Maybe
True.
it could be an opportunity, yeah.
Yeah, well, here we go. We found another opportunity. And I see Maurice in the questions and answers is saying, are there other contexts that we can learn from? That there is data, but that it doesn't involve a lot of intersectionality elements like region or residence or gender, or, as you said, actual learning outcomes, Charles. This has been very rich, team. We're coming up towards the end of our webinar. Please don't leave before we tell you how to continue being engaged with us. I think we've spoken about a lot. Some of the points that personally were such highlights for me were this issue of the trust between all the different stakeholders, the fears that exist, the legitimate fears that exist also. I think I really am left thinking about the audience's questions around, how data has been misused or how there could have been dishonesty, and how can we really collaborate with openness and transparency and hold each other to similar standards, and to do it with people rather than just ask for it to be done. We've talked about aggregated and disaggregated data by many different indicators. I think we've also opened a box that says how complex data is. You might have a number about certain learners, like learners with disabilities, but you actually don't know what are the numbers when you add other layers, children with disabilities who are females, children with disabilities who are rural, linking that to actual outcomes. So there's a lot of complexity in the different layers of data. We've talked a lot about capacities for analysis, for capacities for common data collection tools and repositories, and actually definitions also. There's lots of opportunities that came in the chat, especially from Rwanda and Uganda. And we want to tell you that we want to expand our community of practice and unlocking data initiative to other countries. So people from Rwanda, Uganda, or others who did not write specifically, but are working on similar projects, we're very open to discuss collaborations and expansions and creating and coming into our community of practice. And this brings me to, if you'd like to join our community of practice for the Unlocking Data Initiative, whether it's to share resources or to be invited to upcoming events or to invite us to your upcoming events, the team from EdTech Hub will put in the chat our sign-up form. There are many ways to be involved. It includes being a partner in the core research process, to co-create prototypes for evidence generation and uses in one of the 3 countries. Another level of engagement would be to join national committees of learning and sharing work and practice and toolkits. Another level is to invite us to host a community of learning in your own country where the initiative is not yet expanded, but we are very excited to expand to all of Sub-Saharan Africa. And another is to actually keep us updated and to keep updated with our communications and reports and global public goods, and to send us your work and also have us feature it. You can indicate the form that you like in terms of how you'd like to be engaged on the sign-up form. We would love to hear from you. I want to thank everybody who has been part of this. Esme Kazamera from CERT in Malawi, Rigobert Pampe from eBay's in Cameroon, Charles Gashoki from Zizi Afrik in Kenya, and all the teams behind you, all the teams that are part of all the amazing work that's happening in Unlocking Data Initiative, Jill from EdTech Hub, Latte from Education Sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you all for making this happen, and thank you to all of our audience. We've had over 120 people tuning in today, and hopefully more as this recording gets released. And keep in touch with Unlocking Data. We only have 2 minutes left, so Esme, Rigo, Charles, in this order. Esme, Rigo, Charles, if there's anything you want to say.
First of all, to thank everybody who is participating here, and just to reiterate the appeal that Nariman has made, that we are here to work with you. It's the work is not just the team in the 3 countries that will be doing. We'll be reaching out to the academia, people in the NGO, donors, government. We need to collaborate to work together in this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I would have said it better than Esme. You have the link to our community of practice. Join us and let's build national and even a Pan-African repository.
I don't know if Charles' internet has become ungraceful at the very end. Maybe this is it. Thanks everyone for joining us. Stay connected and have wonderful afternoons and evenings. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye.